Hello, night owls and accidental historians. Tonight, we slip past the velvet ropes of ancient Rome, where decadence has its own RSVP and business casual means, well, not much at all. Forget everything you learned about Julius Caesar's salad preferences. Tonight, we're meeting the true masterminds of Roman society, the orgy planners. Yes, you heard that right. Somewhere between the steamy bathhouses and the never-ending toga emergencies, someone had to coordinate the guest list, the wine shipments, the harpists — nobody likes awkward silences — and of course the emergency stash of fig leaves. Fun fact, in Rome, an orgy wasn't so much a party as it was a logistics miracle. Think of it as a high-pressure wedding planner gig, except the flowers are laurel crowns and the cake is, well, let's just say, improvised. If you've ever wondered what it's like to juggle scandal, scented oils, and a senator's impossible dietary restrictions, you're in exactly the right marble-clad corridor. If you're tuning in from a creaky apartment in Saigon at 2 a.m., or lounging in Buenos Aires where the wine flows and the clocks are optional, drop a comment below. I love picturing who's out there, plotting their own midnight banquets. With fewer emperors, one hopes. Go ahead, click subscribe and ring the bell, if only to avoid missing out on what Cicero would have called essential listening. Probably with a raised eyebrow. Settle back, dim the lights, and let the soft, faintly scandalous breeze of history tickle your toes. Ready? Tonight, you're not just a guest. You're the architect behind Rome's most legendary feasts. Let's wander in. You open your eyes just before sunrise, which is either a sign of true discipline or simply what happens when you fall asleep face down in a pile of orgy invitations. The air is faintly cool, with the kind of hush that only happens when even the city's stray cats are still nursing their wine hangovers. As you push yourself upright, the mosaic tiles press patterns into your palms, cool, slick, and just a bit sticky. Note to self: don't let the kitchen slave use honey as floor polish again. Outside, the first light slips in through the crimson curtains. Imported silk, mind you, not that cheap stuff from the provinces. The fabric glows as if some minor goddess is testing her early morning spotlight, and for a moment, you can almost forget the chaos that's coming. Almost. From somewhere far away, you catch the distant rattle of a vegetable cart. Probably Gaius, the lettuce vendor, who's been at this since the last time Jupiter had a bad hair day. Gaius will want a prime seat at tonight's feast, as always, even though he's only ever invited for his amusing impressions of the emperor's mother. The city stirs. You hear the soft, persistent clatter of sandals on stone, and the faint but unmistakable aroma of baking bread drifts through the latticework. Your stomach grumbles, again. This is Rome, after all, where nobody ever really eats enough, at least not before noon, unless they're a senator or a goat. Stretch, breathe in, and glance at the wall. There's your schedule for the day, lovingly scratched into a wax tablet by your most trusted slave, Felix. Felix has beautiful handwriting, although his spelling of exotic dancers always veers dangerously close to exotic dangers, which, in fairness, is sometimes accurate. Your official title is a moving target. Some call you a convivium architectus, a banquet architect. Others whisper that you're a dealer in delights. Your mother prefers disappointment, but she's still upset about that incident with the peacock feathers and the archpriest's daughter. Regardless, you are the one they call when Rome needs to forget its worries, its politics, and, on special occasions, its clothes. You pad across the marble, toes curling at the shock of cold. Each step echoes in the high-ceilinged atrium, the sound bouncing around statues of gods who are no doubt judging you. Mercury, god of messengers and sneak thieves, smirks from his alcove, and you give him a quick wink. He understands. Let's talk logistics, because nothing says sexy ancient party like checklists. Your mind ticks through tonight's plan. Wine delivery, triple order. Last time, someone tried to water it down, and the poet Catullus nearly started a riot. Fresh rose petals for the triclinium. One guest is allergic to lilies, and another has strong opinions about violets, as if you have time to care. Musicians, ideally sober for the first hour or two, and, most crucially, a guest list that won't spark open warfare between rival factions of the Senate. If you think ancient Rome was all togas and laurel wreaths, you've clearly never seen two patricians argue over seating charts. You pass by your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. You look fine. There's a faint smear of coal from last night's planning meeting, and you're pretty sure that's a pomegranate seed in your hair. Whatever. No one expects the orgy planner to be well-rested or well-groomed, just organized. In the peristyle, the first rays of sun catch the dew on the marble columns, making them glisten as if the gods themselves approve of your efforts. Somewhere a pigeon coos, probably plotting to crash the buffet later. It's happened before. One ambitious pigeon managed to upstage a senator and 3 courtesans. You still have nightmares. You pause at the household shrine where a faint coil of incense smoke curls upward. The lairs, the household spirits, peer out from their niche, tiny terracotta faces locked in what you hope is encouragement, but might just be skepticism. You mutter a quick promise to offer extra honey cakes if things go smoothly tonight, which, given the senator's new mistress and the recent aqueduct gossip, seems unlikely. There's a gentle knock on the door. Felix, up early as ever, his eyes wide with the adrenaline only possible in the service of chaos. He hands you a list of last-minute requests. One senator now insists on a platter of flamingo tongues. Thank you, Lucullus, for starting that ridiculous trend. Someone else wants a statue of Venus moved for aesthetic purposes. Translation: it blocks my dramatic entrance. And, most daunting, a visiting poet will be performing a new composition entitled Ode to an Olive. You're not sure if this is meant to be erotic or just avant-garde. Rome is like that. You wander out onto the balcony for a moment's peace. The forum stretches out before you, shrouded in a silver morning mist. Vendors set up their stalls with the grim determination of gladiators, and you catch the first call of a hawker advertising spices fit for an emperor's palate or a hungover party planner. The street below already buzzes with rumor, rivalry, and the low-key panic of a city that knows tonight could bring either glory or scandal, depending on how well you do your job. You rub your temples and sigh, not for the last time today. Behind you, Felix rattles off the list. Candles, beeswax, not tallow. Nobody wants the scent of burning sheep at a sensual gathering. More cushions, because apparently last time's relaxing on marble trend was not universally adored. And double-check the invitations. Last week, someone forged a senator's RSVP and chaos ensued again. There's a certain magic in these moments before the madness, a sense that Rome herself is holding her breath, waiting to see how you'll outdo yourself this time. You listen to the faint trickle of water from the garden fountain, the clink of amphorae in the storeroom, and the far-off laughter of a neighbor already telling stories about last year's festivities. You wonder, not for the first time, if the gods appreciate your efforts, or if they're just using you as their favorite punchline. And so you set your shoulders, wrap yourself in your least wrinkled toga, and head for the bathhouse, because in Rome, All great days, and absolutely all great scandals, begin with a good steam and a little gossip. The marble is still cold beneath your feet, but your mind is already ablaze with possibilities. The sun rises a little higher, gilding the city's rooftops, and you're ready, sort of. In Rome, no one is ever fully prepared, and that, in the end, is half the fun. A hush, a shimmer of light, and a new day begins. You step outside, and the day is already threatening to be a scorcher. One of those Roman mornings where even the statues seem to sweat. You make your way through narrow alleys, sidestepping sleepy dogs and last night's confetti, until the heavy door of the bathhouse looms ahead. Entering, you're hit by a wall of steamy air so thick you could spread it on bread and call it breakfast. The scent is a heady soup of olive oil, soap, and whatever yesterday's senator left behind, spiced with the faint undercurrent of conspiracy. Here's the unspoken rule. Nothing serious happens in the Senate before noon. All the real negotiations, bribery, and accidental run-ins take place here, where people are slightly naked and vastly more honest. You shuffle your way through the antechamber, where your friend Flavia, today's unofficial towel monitor, greets you with a knowing smirk. She's already caught 2 guests who tried to sneak in by pretending to be philosophers. One was carrying a chicken for deep discussion. You nod at her, still not fully awake, and let a slave help you shrug out of your toga. He folds it with such reverence, you suspect he thinks it will bring him luck. It won't. The caldarium, or hot room, is your first stop. The marble benches are warm, almost too warm, and your skin prickles as you lower yourself onto a spot near the far wall, a favorite location for both plotting and eavesdropping. There's nothing quite like the soundscape of the Roman baths, water dripping rhythmically from leaky pipes, distant shouts as someone realizes their sandals have been borrowed again, and the occasional high-pitched squeal from a senator who's discovered a cold spot. In the middle distance, a group of matrons is arguing over the best recipe for dormouse pie. You make a mental note to avoid that table tonight. Felix sidles up, balancing a tray of honeyed figs and a handful of wax tablets. The musician wants a room with better acoustics, he whispers. The gladiator wants to bring his pet leopard, and the senator from Capua, well, he wants to arrive in a chariot shaped like Neptune's trident. You close your eyes and let your head fall back against the wall. Tell the musician we'll move the statues. Tell the gladiator the leopard gets a seat at the kids' table. And tell the senator from Capua, never mind, I'll handle that one myself. Felix vanishes, as if the steam itself swallowed him whole. Now comes the brainstorming. You're not alone. A rotund merchant with a voice like a foghorn plops down next to you. He's the supplier of the evening's wine, 3 amphorae of Falernian, plus a suspicious new blend he swears is all the rage in Carthage. Translation, leftovers. He starts in on his usual pitch about flavor notes, but you're more interested in whether he can deliver on time. In Rome, the only thing worse than running out of wine is running out of scandal to distract people from the lack of wine. Next, the poets arrive. Yes, poets, because what's an orgy without a few tortured souls muttering verse and making awkward eye contact with the musicians? One, a thin youth with wild hair and a toga worn like a plea for help, sits down and immediately starts composing lines about lustrous dawn and honeyed lips. You try to look impressed, but you're mainly thinking about the seating chart. There's nothing like poetry to make you wish the steam was thicker. The baths are an ideal place for secrets to float up to the surface. Behind you, 2 senators are whispering about who will be sitting nearest the consul's wife. You pretend not to listen, but of course you're listening, because tonight's success depends on who's placed next to whom, and who might accidentally spill wine on the wrong tunic. You catch the word conspiracy and make a note to put those two on opposite sides of the table. Experience has taught you, the less likely your guests are to stab each other, the better your tips. You decide it's time for the frigidarium, the cold plunge. This is the bathhouse's way of weeding out the faint of heart. The water is so cold it could wake a sleeping cyclops. You lower yourself in, and every inch of your body protests. But afterward you feel sharper, more awake, ready for anything, even the question you've been dreading. What's the theme for tonight? A familiar voice asks it, and you turn to see Livia, Rome's self-declared queen of gossip, reclining on a nearby bench. Will it be Greek gods again? We had such a laugh last time when that actor showed up as Zeus. He nearly set his beard on fire. You grin and tell her, tonight, the theme is eternal Rome. Think togas, laurels, and a strict no actual emperors policy. She laughs, which in Livia's case means you're in for twice as many rumors by sunset. Meanwhile, the musicians have wandered in for their own soak, arguing about whether lyres or double pipes are more appropriate for sensual revelry. You try not to take sides, but deep down, you know nothing kills the mood like a flutist with stage fright. Back in the tepidarium, you plot out the entertainment. Jugglers, fortune tellers, maybe even a fire eater if the weather holds. Someone suggests importing a mime from Gaul, but you put your foot down. There are limits, even in Rome. Steam rises, obscuring faces and names, but ideas float freely. Here, alliances are forged and sabotaged, all with a dollop of olive oil and a dash of salt. Your skin tingles, your mind buzzes, and you realize you wouldn't trade this job for all the gold in the treasury. Well, maybe for half. As you dry off, Flavia hands you a new wax tablet. Don't forget to remind the slaves, no fish sauce in the fountains this time. The last cleanup took days. You nod, vowing silently to write a treatise one day. The 10 things every party planner should never say. Chapter 1. No, that is not a fireproof toga. You wrap yourself in your toga once more, recharged and dripping with inspiration and a bit of olive oil. The morning is still young, but already your mind is humming with plans, contingencies, and just a whisper of dread. Tonight, the city will pulse with laughter, gossip, and, if all goes well, applause. You step out of the bathhouse into the full light of morning, steam swirling behind you, ready to conquer chaos once more. A hush, a faint gleam of sunlight, and you stride onward. If you think all Roman parties are simply open invitations to debauchery, think again. Tonight's celebration isn't a mob scene, it's a masterpiece of social engineering, and you, O fearless orchestrator, are the one forced to wield the wax tablet like a gladius. As you slip back through your own atrium, hair still faintly damp from the bathhouse, you spot the infamous tablet laid out on the table, glistening under a shaft of sunlight as if daring you to mess up and start another family feud. Guest lists are less about who's fun and more about who's lethal if left out. Remember last year when Marcus the Younger was accidentally snubbed and showed up anyway, wearing nothing but a borrowed laurel and a scowl? You do. So does your neighbor's pet goat, who still refuses to eat laurel. This time you promise yourself there will be no accidents. Every name, every title, every complicated love triangle must be weighed like gold in the scales of Nemesis. You take a seat, the wax tablet cool and promising under your fingers, stylus poised. Felix hovers with a scroll of names, eyebrows twitching with every scandal he can remember, which is most of them. Shall we start with the senators or the poets? He asks, as if either group is easier to wrangle than an amphitheater of drunken gladiators. You sigh and say, senators, because if you don't deal with them first, you'll need stronger wine. Let's see. Senator Cornelius, who refuses to sit next to anyone who owns a pet monkey. It's a long story involving a toga, a missing roast duck, and a rather public apology. His wife, Flavia, who's known to rearrange table settings when she's bored, and can start an argument about dessert in 3 languages. Then there's Tiberius. No, not that Tiberius, thank the gods, who always arrives late and leaves early, but is the only one who knows how to fix the main fountain when it inevitably breaks. It's a toss-up between inviting him or hiring another engineer, but you remember how the last one demanded hazard pay and 3 eunuchs for moral support. You add their names, shifting them around on the tablet, playing a mental game of chess where every piece is a potential disaster. Each time you settle on a combination, Felix frowns and points out a potential feud, a broken heart, or an unresolved lawsuit. If you put Cornelius near Julia, you'll need extra guards, he warns. If you seat Lucilla next to the Greek philosopher, she'll recite erotic poetry and scandalize the priest again. You stare at the list, half expecting it to burst into flames. Poets are next. You love them, you really do, when they aren't weeping into their wine or challenging each other to impromptu sonnet duels. There's Sulpicia, the darling of the Subura, who can silence a room with a single glare. Then Marcus Rufus, who claims inspiration strikes only when he's surrounded by unattainable beauty, which means at least 4 dancers, a statue of Venus, and someone willing to listen to him rant about form and essence until dawn. You add them, hesitantly, and hope the muses show up as well. Next come the power couples, the socialites, the schemers, and those mysterious plus ones whose names you never learn until someone's jewelry goes missing. There's an unspoken rule that any party worth its salt must have at least 2 high-profile lovers, 1 disguised foreigner, and 1 person who shouldn't be there at all. It's your job to make sure they don't all end up at the same end of the table, unless you're in the mood for a scene. As you scribble, the scent of melting wax drifts through the room, mingling with the sharp tang of ink and the distant aroma of baking bread. The city's morning buzz seeps in through the window. A donkey brays, somewhere a merchant bellows about fresh oysters, and children's laughter rings off the paving stones. Rome is alive, breathing, impatient, waiting to see who gets in and who is doomed to simply imagine the spectacle from their own darkened doorways. There are always the regulars, those whose absence would be noticed as much as a statue's missing nose. Decimus, the exiled philosopher, currently not exiled, thanks to a well-placed bribe, who insists on a seat near the exits, just in case philosophy breaks out. Clodia, who brings her own wine and twice as much gossip. The twins, whose main function seems to be confusing everyone, including themselves. Each name is a potential triumph or ticking time bomb. You keep a tally of who owes whom a favor and who might bring a surprise guest. Last time, someone's guest was a very small, very nervous lion cub. Long story, but the carpets have never recovered. The hardest part isn't keeping track of the names. It's predicting their moods, their rivalries, their hidden agendas. You know that inviting Marcia without her new lover would cause a scandal, but inviting them both means seating them next to her ex, who's also the chef for tonight's meal. You imagine the look on his face as he presents the main course, and you almost want to see it, almost. Suddenly a messenger bursts in with a new scroll, breathless and sweating. "An urgent update," he gasps, thrusting the scroll into your hand. You break the seal and scan the hastily scribbled Latin. Senator Aurelius has canceled family illness, which in Rome could mean anything from a real disease to simply running out of clean togas. But the up-and-coming actress Cassia will attend in his place. You grin. She always brings the best stories and even better disguises. And then, the wild cards. The Greek envoy with the suspiciously large entourage, the fortune teller who might be a spy or just very nosy, the gladiator with a heart of gold and an appetite to match. You weigh each against the needs of the evening, a hint of danger, a whiff of mystery, just enough chaos to keep things lively, but not so much that you have to call the city guard again. Felix hovers, offering advice and unsolicited gossip. Did you hear about the consul's nephew and the stolen oysters? You tune him out, lost in the rhythm of names, notes, and ancient grudges. It's almost a kind of music, the way these lives twist together, collide, and then spin apart, only to rejoin next week, next feast, next scandal. By the time you finish, the sun is climbing, and your fingers ache from clutching the stylus. The guest list is done, or as done as it will ever be. Fluid, dangerous, almost alive. You sit back and look at the wax, gleaming and imperfect, and feel a rush of something like pride, or maybe just relief. Outside, the day is calling. You tuck the tablet under your arm, send up a quick prayer to Mercury for swift feet and swifter apologies, and head for the markets. The guest list is set. The stage is almost ready. For now, at least, you've survived. A hush, a flicker of shadow across the mosaic, and the game begins anew. You step from the measured chaos of your own atrium into the unfiltered bedlam of the Roman marketplace, where the only thing louder than the shouting is your own anxiety about figs. The sun is climbing, a blazing orange coin in the sky, and every alley you turn down is a cacophony of squawking chickens, sharp-elbowed matrons, and merchants hawking their goods with the subtlety of a lion in heat. You're on a mission. If you're to maintain your reputation as Rome's premier purveyor of pleasurable evenings, you need supplies, specifically mountains of fruit, amphorae of wine, and at least one scandalously overpriced honey cake. The air here is thick, fragrant, and more than a little sticky, sweet with overripe peaches, sour with spilled vinegar, spiced with dust and cinnamon. You feel a grape burst underfoot, cold and wet between your toes. Somewhere overhead, a flock of pigeons launches itself into the sky, perhaps on their way to consult with the city's council of gods about which food stall to besiege next. You slide into the river of people, your senses overwhelmed. Vendors wave bundles of fresh mint in your face, for the breath, for the nerves, for the aftertaste of anchovy sauce, while one bold teenager tries to barter a sack of walnuts for a kiss. You're tempted to ask if he has change for a wink. No time, though. Felix follows at your heels, clutching a battered basket and reading from your list. Pomegranates, check. Dates, soft, not crunchy. Almonds, figs, both green and purple. Wine, every kind, as long as it doesn't taste like last week's fish sauce. Honey, by the jar. Spices enough to bankrupt a senator, and bread that won't break your uncle's tooth. First stop, the fruit stall. The matron behind the table has arms like tree trunks and a voice to match. She eyes you as you squeeze a fig, testing for ripeness, and winks. "Looking for something sweet, darling," she croons, "or just trying to replace last night's regrets?" You laugh, hand over a few coins, and move on, grateful for her mercy. She slips an extra fig into your bag, her way of ensuring an invitation, or at least a good story about your next party. You weave your way through the crowd, dodging a goat who's developed a taste for your sandals, and a pair of philosophers arguing about whether olives can achieve true happiness. Overhead, the awnings flap in the breeze, casting stripes of gold and shadow over piles of cherries, mounds of dates, baskets of oranges. You inhale, sharp citrus, musty nuts, the faint perfume of some long-dead ancestor's favorite flower. This is the heart of Rome, pulsing, hungry, and just a bit unwashed. Next up, wine. If fruit is the poetry of the market, Wine is its music, loud, unpredictable, and occasionally responsible for the collapse of entire dynasties. You approach Lucius, your regular supplier whose beard seems to have its own weather system. "Ah, the great architect returns," he bellows. "Ready to bankrupt me again?" You shrug and grin, inspecting the amphorae lined up like soldiers on parade. There's Falernian, dark as secrets and twice as expensive, for the senators. Succuban, with a honeyed bite, for the poets and dancers. And something Lucius calls Bacchus's last mistake, which you wisely avoid unless you're planning a public apology tour. You taste a sip from a clay cup, oak and wildflowers, with just enough bite to wake the tongue. "I'll take 6, you say, pretending not to see Felix wince at the price. "6!" Lucius roars. "You planning to drown the Senate?" "Only the boring parts," you reply, and Lucius laughs so hard he nearly tips over a crate of dates. He throws in a smaller amphora on the house, which, in Lucius's world, means he'll be waiting at the door tonight, arms open and lips loose with gossip. You make a mental note to seat him far from the more sensitive senators. Honey is next, thick, golden, dangerously alluring. The beekeeper's daughter, all freckles and mischief, offers you a taste on a sliver of wood. The sweetness explodes in your mouth, chased by something wild and green. "Best batch in years," she brags, and you believe her. "I hope you're planning a grand dessert. The gods know Rome needs a little more sugar." You grin and buy 2 jars, resolving to use the honey wisely. Drizzled over goat cheese, spooned onto pastries, perhaps even dabbed behind the ear in a moment of whimsy. The market is a living thing, its rhythm contagious. You dodge a street performer balancing amphorae on his forehead, narrowly miss a runaway chicken, and try not to eavesdrop on a merchant's whispered negotiations with a priestess. Everyone wants a piece of your party. The fishmonger hints at secret supplies of oysters. The baker offers a loaf shaped like Venus herself, risque even by your standards. And the spice seller, wrapped in mystery and a dozen cloaks, beckons you closer. He opens a small wooden box, letting out a puff of scent so heady you nearly swoon. Cinnamon, pepper, coriander, dried rose petals, each more extravagant than the last. "For your special evening," he murmurs, "may the gods look kindly upon your guests, and less kindly on their memories." You take a pinch of each, pay the price, and slip away, the world swimming in color and aroma. Felix keeps track of the purchases, crossing off each item with a flourish, though you suspect he's adding a few of his own favorites. "One last thing," you say. "Flowers. Enough to hide every bad decision in Rome." The florist, an old friend, understands. She bundles armfuls of roses, laurel, violets, and the odd, scandalous narcissus. As you pay, she leans in and whispers, "If you need a last-minute alibi, just say you were here with me." The market is nothing if not a web of favors, debts, and sweet-smelling secrets. Arms laden, purse lighter, you turn back toward home, weaving through the thinning crowds. The sun is nearly overhead now, turning the stones white-hot beneath your feet. You feel sweat prickling down your back and the weight of the feast to come pressing on your shoulders. But you also feel a thrill, a wild anticipation, an electric buzz that says, yes, tonight could be the one they talk about for generations, if only you've chosen the right figs. You pause at the edge of the forum, looking back one last time at the riot of color, sound, and scent. Rome's heart is beating strong, and you, for one glorious moment, are in sync with its madness. A hush, a warm fruit-scented breeze, and you slip back toward the palace, your basket heavy with promise. If you thought the Roman marketplace was a circus, you clearly haven't survived toga fittings the day of a major banquet. You stagger home with arms full of figs, honey, and flowers, only to find your vestibule already a battlefield. Bolts of fabric draped over statues, servants tripping over discarded sashes, and, in one corner, a rather famous poet desperately trying to wrangle himself into a garment that's somehow both too long and too short. The air is heavy with linen dust and fraying nerves. Somewhere, a lyre plucks a plaintive note, as if even the instruments are bracing for impact. You dump your loot on the nearest table, promptly squashing 2 figs no one will notice, roll up your sleeves, and plunge into the melee. Your house tailor, the imperturbable Gaius, has been sewing since dawn. He eyes your arrival with the resigned weariness of a man who's seen things, tunic-related things, that can never be untold. The senator's wife wants her hem above the ankle, he mutters, but only on the left. The twins demand matching stripes, opposite sides naturally. The actress Cassia has brought a diagram, and that, he gestures to a swirling pile of purple silk, is what's left of last year's innovation. You almost ask, but think better of it. To the uninitiated, a toga is just a bedsheet with ideas above its station. In reality, it's a 20-foot monster with a grudge against dignity. There are rules. So many rules. Toga virilis for upstanding male citizens, pure white and stunningly impractical. Toga praetexta with its precious purple border for those with connections, and the patience for grape juice stains. Then, of course, the women's stola, equal parts fashion and fortress, and a mind-bending array of sashes, pins, and sneaky undergarments. Don't ask, don't tell. You grab a length of snowy linen and help Marcus the Younger, who's still half-dressed and full of complaints. "I can't breathe," he protests as you wind fabric under his arm and over his shoulder. "That's the idea," you reply. "The less you breathe, the less you'll say to offend the consul." He grins and stumbles off, tripping on his own hem. You sigh, call for pins, and pray to Minerva for patience. It's a tactile carnival. Your hands brush cool, slightly rough linen. The tang of new dye stings your nose, and as the tailors dart in and out, you're enveloped by a chorus of voices, bickering, gossiping, giggling. The poet Sulpicia wants her stola draped to suggest melancholy, but not despair. The gladiator, massive and blushing, is being fitted for a tunic designed to impress but not intimidate, an impossible brief. Felix is helping with belts, surreptitiously pocketing lost coins and dropped hairpins. He's building his own retirement fund, one wardrobe malfunction at a time. Cassia, tonight's starlet and perpetual source of drama, sweeps in late, trailing a retinue of stylists, admirers, and one extremely confused tortoise. She presents her sketch with a flourish. "It's avant-garde," she purrs. "See, bare shoulder, asymmetrical pleats, subtle embroidery of Jupiter wrestling a dolphin." You nod as if this is completely reasonable, and gesture to Gaius, who will find a way, because he always does. Cassia throws you a kiss. Whether it's gratitude or a threat, you can never tell. Then there's the matter of color. In Rome, color is power and gossip. Tyrian purple, the color of emperors and the spectacularly wealthy, is always in short supply and high demand. Your friend Decimus claims his tunic is naturally purpled by proximity to royalty, which is just his way of explaining the wine stains. The twins bicker over which hue better flatters their identical jawlines, and in the chaos, someone spills a jar of saffron dye, turning the floor, and one small yapping dog, a shade of gold that will haunt your dreams. If you're lucky, the fittings also become a bit of a flirtation festival. Rome's youth are experts at turning a shared mirror or a quick pinning of the hem into a moment of whispered promises. One pair vanishes behind a curtain, reappearing 10 minutes later with glowing cheeks and somehow their togas tied in knots that defy geometry and decency. You arch an eyebrow and pretend not to notice. There's a kind of electricity in the room, the excitement of transformation, 100 bodies becoming their best, brightest, and sometimes most scandalous selves, all thanks to the miracle of fabric and audacity. As the hour creeps on, the chaos builds. Someone's lost their sash. Someone else is sewing roses into her hair. A slave runs in, breathless, to announce that the poet Rufus has challenged the baker to a duel over who wears flour better. The gladiator's tunic splits at the seams when he flexes. The house cat decides this is the perfect moment to nap atop the togas, leaving a constellation of fur behind. You oversee it all, issuing orders, making quick fixes, rescuing a guest from a too-tight belt, and fielding frantic last-minute requests. Can I have more pins? Less pins? No pins? Through it all, you manage a smile, maybe even a laugh, as you imagine the spectacle soon to unfold. A room of draped and bejeweled Romans, strutting their stuff under torchlight, each convinced they are the true center of the party. Finally, the storm begins to subside. Gaius surveys the damage and declares it acceptable, considering. Cassia blows you a kiss. The gladiator offers a grateful nod, now safely contained in linen. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, dye, and anticipation. Felix collects the discarded scraps, calculating how many could be sold at tomorrow's market as vintage. You step back, surveying the room. The aftermath is glorious chaos. Spools of thread, a trail of pins, abandoned sashes, and everywhere, the sound of laughter and teasing. You allow yourself a moment's pride. Every toga straight, every guest accounted for, every small disaster woven into the grand tapestry of the night to come. You head for the door, wiping a streak of indigo from your arm, already hearing the distant sounds of the city stirring for evening. The fittings are over, the flirtations are simmering, and you, for now, are triumphant. A hush, the soft rustle of linen, and you drift onward toward the next great challenge. You barely make it out of the toga storm alive, trailing a bit of purple thread like a badge of office when you remember there's one thing worse than a Roman feast with bad wine, and that's a Roman feast with bad entertainment. Or, gods forbid, no entertainment at all. Rome without music is just a series of arguments, and nobody wants that. So you set your jaw and march across the courtyard, past the statue of Apollo, god of music, and judging by his expression, god of endless performance reviews, ready to herd musicians, dancers, and whatever else you can wrangle into an evening of delight. The city's artists, of course, have their own secret meeting places. Today you find them crowded into the shade of a colonnade, tuning instruments, trading rumors, and rehearsing their best I'm in high demand pouts. There's a flutist, beautiful and sulking, running scales so fast your ears nearly wilt. Next to her, two lyre players argue about whether to play something sultry or heroic. The poet, always a poet lurking like a particularly dramatic fungus, murmurs about bringing a hush over the crowd as dawn hushes the Tiber. You consider offering him a hush right now. Your approach is met with feigned indifference and furtive glances. They all know your reputation. The trick is to act unimpressed, as if you could just as easily fill the hall with singing eunuchs or worse, silence. You flip your wax tablet with a flourish. One harpist, two flutists, a pair of lyres, a chorus that won't fall asleep before dessert, and a dancer who knows how to keep her veil on, at least until the second course. Any volunteers? This apparently is the cue for absolute chaos. Hands shoot up. The harpist, Callistus, is first, promising new compositions inspired by the winds of Carthage. You suspect this means he's lost his old music, but who's checking? The twins, again with twins, Rome has more than its fair share, demonstrate a slapstick juggling act using oranges, one of which promptly escapes and rolls under a senator's sandal. Felix, never missing a beat, pockets the orange. For later, he says. Negotiations begin in earnest. The flutist demands better lighting. No shadows. Last time I played to a statue for half an hour. The lyre players want hazard pay if seated near the more amorous guests, and the chorus won't sing anything in Dorian mode, too somber, too last year. You listen, nodding wisely, making notes and promises you half mean and half remember. It's a delicate balance. You must flatter, cajole, threaten to replace them with a dancing bear, and above all, pretend you are not the least bit desperate. Dancers are next. You recognize one. Livia, the darling of Rome's midnight festivals, who can twirl a scarf into submission and has a laugh like honey on hot stones. She eyes you with mock suspicion. Will you let the poet recite during my dance again? She asks, eyebrow arched. You swear by every laurel in the city that the poet will remain seated and silent, at least until the third round of wine. She grins, satisfied, and twirls away to practice, trailing a whisper of sandalwood and trouble. You test the musicians with a few impromptu requests, something slow and dreamy for the opening, something scandalous for when the senators start boasting, and of course a lively number for the moment the dessert arrives and everyone pretends they're not already tipsy. The twins on lyre invent a tune so catchy you find yourself humming it as you walk away, notes trailing after you like curious kittens. Entertainment, in Rome, is a full contact sport. Someone suggests a fire eater. Only set the curtains ablaze twice this year. And you make a mental note to keep extra water on hand. There are rumors of a Greek acrobat in town for just one night, who can balance a peacock on his head while reciting love poetry backward. You dispatch Felix to make an offer, armed with coins and a warning, no animals with talons or bad attitudes. Then, the sideshows, the fortune teller, a curly-haired matron who claims she can read futures in spilled wine, and the ventriloquist, whose puppet's jokes tend to veer dangerously close to political. For insurance, you hire both, hoping the puppet will insult just the right senator, and the fortune teller will predict nothing more dire than an overdue tax bill. Of course, no list is complete without a wild card. Today it's an exiled philosopher claiming he can recite Homer in 3 languages and juggle amphorae at the same time. Can you do both at once, you ask? He hesitates, then shrugs. For enough wine, anything is possible. You add him to the roster, reasoning that at least if he drops an amphora, you'll have something new to talk about. By midday, your list is a glorious, chaotic mess, half reality, half wishful thinking. The chorus warms up with a rowdy drinking song, and suddenly the whole square erupts into impromptu music, dancers whirling, musicians competing to be heard, and you, at the center, pretending you're not already imagining all the ways this could go wrong. The crowd that gathers is already applauding, always a good sign, or at least better than last time, when the only applause came from the local geese. Satisfied enough, you settle contracts with quick words and quicker coins. Promises are made, some sealed with a wink, others with a handshake sticky from fruit. You catch a stray line of music on the breeze, the kind that tingles in your chest and makes you almost believe everything will go smoothly. For a moment, you stand still and just let the noise, the energy, the sheer ridiculous joy of it wash over you. This is the pulse of Rome, the music, the mischief, the anticipation that something unexpected is always just about to happen. You thank the gods and Apollo's eternally patient statue, pocket your now much lighter purse, and turn for home. humming that impossible tune, already planning how to seat the musicians so they're close enough to play, but far enough to avoid the splash zone. A hush, a last trembling note in the air, and you move on, ready for whatever spectacle comes next. If you thought the guest list was complicated, wait until you face the labyrinth of table settings, where each cushion is a chess move, every platter a potential diplomatic incident, and the geometry of pleasure is measured in elbows, not degrees. You return home to the site of your triclinium, the great feasting chamber, already half dismantled, sunlight filtering through latticework and shimmering across a sea of polished marble, silk cushions, and a small army of anxious slaves, all waiting for your word. The air inside is heavy with the promise of decadence and a faint undercurrent of panic. The walls are painted with scenes of nymphs and satyrs who look far more relaxed than you'll ever be. The day's heat lingers here, mingling with the scent of beeswax from the tall, many-wicked candles, some of them just for light, others pure theater, because a party's not a party unless someone's hair nearly goes up in flames. You stride to the head of the room and survey the battlefield. This is your stage, your arena, your place to shine. Or, if you misjudge the seating chart, the scene of next year's greatest scandal. The centerpiece, a great U-shaped table, low to the ground, wide enough for the wealthiest waistlines and the most reckless reclining. Cushions everywhere, plump velvet, striped silk, and a few slightly lumpy ones that mysteriously migrate to the least popular guests. You give orders, sending Felix and the other helpers scurrying. 3 to a couch, except for the twins. They'll try to switch places anyway. No musicians near the soup. Poets by the window. If they start declaiming, I want an escape route. They nod, jotting notes, rearranging the universe one pillow at a time. The slaves giggle as they smooth out the fabrics, swapping gossip about which senator will spill his wine first. Table setting in Rome is an art, a science, and a blood sport. You set the best seats, those closest to the host, and, of course, the food, for the most important guests. Power radiates from the host outward, like heat from a brazier, or gossip from a bored matron. Closer to the head, senators, wealthy patrons, anyone who can make or break your career with a word or a well-timed yawn. Further down the line, poets, actors, up-and-coming socialites, and that one visiting merchant who always manages to charm everyone and never pays his share. You run your fingers along the polished wood, tracing the pattern of inlaid ivory and mother of pearl. The surfaces gleam, cool and hard beneath your touch. In the corner, Felix is wrestling with a bronze candelabrum that appears to be winning. You point out the danger of a flaming centerpiece and suggest moving it to the side table. Last year's burnt eyebrows are still fresh in everyone's memory. Now comes the drama of the platters. Out come the gleaming dishes, silver for the main courses, bronze for the stews, glass for fruit and sweets. Every platter has a story. This one, a gift from a grateful poet. That one, smuggled from Alexandria, or so you claim when the conversation needs livening up. Felix whispers a reminder. No fish sauce near the laurel crowns. Remember last time? You shudder. It took days to get the smell out, and the senator's hair has never quite recovered. The arrangement of food itself is practically an offering to the gods. Mounds of figs, pyramids of dates, wheels of goat cheese, and tiny bowls of honey. You oversee the construction of a fruit pyramid so elaborate that even the sculptor raises an eyebrow. The slaves tuck laurel leaves among the bowls, sprinkle rose petals across the linens, and arrange olives in neat spirals. The result? A landscape of temptation, every color and texture designed to dazzle, distract, and inspire questionable decisions. You pause, breathing in the rich, mingled scents. Warm bread, sharp cheese, sweet fruit, and the unmistakable tang of anticipation. Sunlight glances off the crystal goblets, sending little rainbows dancing across the table. You can almost see tonight's feast unfolding, the laughter, the spilled wine, the confessions whispered between bites, the way the night will bend and blur as course follows course. Seating assignments, of course, are where you earn your laurels and, occasionally, your enemies. You consult your precious tablet again. No lovers seated together unless you want a show. No sworn rivals within arm's reach of sharp cutlery. Poets must never sit next to politicians, unless you want new verses about tax reform. You assign spots, swap them, swap again, and finally just give up on perfection, trusting the gods to sort out the rest. And then, flowers. You scatter them with abandon. Roses for romance, violets for intrigue, laurel for victory, or at least for the person who survives the evening with their dignity intact. Felix adds a few sprigs of basil, for luck, and you don't argue. It's the little things that tip the scales, after all. Someone inevitably asks about place cards. You laugh. Place cards are for the Greeks. In Rome, you earn your seat by reputation, by ambition, or by sheer audacity. Besides, who could resist the thrill of a little uncertainty? The room hums with energy as people begin to arrive for a sneak peek, offering advice, critiques, and subtle bribes for better cushions. You play diplomat, magician, and referee all at once. Before you know it, the tables are set, the cushions fluffed, the candles arranged in neat lines of golden fire. The room glows with a kind of electric possibility, an invitation to mischief, merriment, and maybe, just maybe, a touch of madness. You step back, survey your work, and for a moment, let yourself feel the pride of a true Roman host. The geometry of indulgence is complete, at least until the first wine is spilled. A hush, the faint clink of silver on glass, and the night's feast begins to shimmer on the horizon. If you think planning an orgy is all hedonism and no headaches, try choosing the night's perfume. In Rome, the right scent is the secret handshake of the senses, a signal that whispers, "Tonight, the rules are different." Get it wrong, and the only thing anyone remembers is how the triclinium smelled like Uncle Gaius's feet after a chariot race. You steal a quiet moment in your private cubiculum, away from the clatter of plates and the squabbling of poets. This is where the day's exhaustion finally hits, but you can't let down your guard. Tonight's mood, tonight's legend, depends on what hangs in the air, not just the sound of music or laughter, but a fragrance that will haunt pillows and gossip for weeks. The oil merchants know this, and they prey on your indecision. You summon them, and soon your doorway is a swirl of silk robes, lacquered boxes, and nervous assistants trailing little bottles like priests with relics. The air thickens as they unstopper their wares. Frankincense, spikenard, myrrh, cinnamon, even the infamous Egyptian kaifi, rumored to inspire visions or at least daring fashion choices. "Try this one," says the first merchant, waving a golden flask under your nose. The scent is sharp and sweet, like citrus stolen from a sunlit grove, youthful, flirtatious, a promise of mischief. Next, the spikenard, deep and earthy, with a secret whiff of wild mint. You imagine philosophers getting weepy and senators suddenly declaring their love for democracy and for whoever's nearest. Felix, ever helpful, suggests something neutral, but you shoot him a look. Neutral is for funeral parlors. Tonight demands bravado. You dab a bit of kaifi on your wrist. Instantly the room feels warmer, the colors brighter, your thoughts more experimental. You cough, then laugh, wondering if the orgy will devolve into a conga line or a philosophical debate about why the gods invented noses. The hardest part, as always, is balance. Too much myrrh and you risk somberness. The last thing you want is for the guests to start quoting tragic epics. Too much cinnamon and people spend all night sneezing, blaming the chef. The poet lurking in the doorway suggests rose, timeless, romantic, maybe a little obvious. Subtlety is for the weak, he cries. And then, do you have any lavender? You do. You always do. You remember last year when a senator insisted on patchouli and the entire atrium smelled like a druid's laundry basket. Or the time someone knocked over the oil tray and the marble was slick for days, slaves sliding from room to room as if the gods themselves had declared a festival of slapstick. You set up a scent station by the atrium fountain, a decadent spread of glass bottles, carved alabaster jars, and slender wands for dabbing. Guests will love it. The thrill of choosing, of layering, of staking a little claim on the air. There will be competitions. Who can mix the most alluring blend? Who dares try the mysterious Venus's shadow? A concoction so potent it once sent an entire poetry club into spontaneous iambic hexameter. Felix organizes the line, managing egos and elbows. Clodia, your favorite scandal magnet, arrives first and samples everything, trailing a cloud of rose and trouble. The gladiator, bashful but curious, dabs sandalwood on each wrist. For luck, he asks. You nod. He'll need it. Cassia, the actress, tries them all, giggling and declaring herself a garden of delight. You remind her the scented oil is for skin, not for drinking. Then come the critics. There are always critics. A matron sniffs and claims nothing compares to her grandmother's blend of olive oil and river mud. You don't argue. A young poet nearly swoons over the spikenard, announcing he will immortalize the scent in verse. One more thing for tomorrow's cleaning crew to regret. Even the musicians join in, hoping for inspiration or at least the chance to mask the scent of nervousness. You watch, amused, as the triclinium transforms into a fragrant cloud, honeyed, musky, floral, spicy, and just a touch animal. Every so often a gust of evening air drifts through, blending the perfumes into something wild and unforgettable. You find yourself smiling. This is what you hoped for. Not just a feast for the body, but a seduction for the senses. A memory that clings to skin and hair and rumor. But the real power of scent is in what it hides and reveals. You slip a bit of oil onto your own pulse points, choosing a blend that's both sharp and mellow, something that might make a senator lean in close or a rival keep a careful distance. Rome's greatest secrets, after all, are exchanged not in words but in whispers, sighs, and lingering aromas. The sun begins to dip and you see your guests gathering, radiant and restless. Laughter and flirtation swirl with the perfumes, everyone aglow with anticipation and just a little madness. In this moment, it feels as if the whole city is leaning in, eager to see, no, to smell how you will tip the balance between pleasure and chaos. You take one last walk through the atrium, letting the mingled scents follow you like a private retinue. The feast is ready, the music cued, the night perfumed with possibility. A hush, a swirl of rose and frankincense, and you breathe deep, stepping into the next act of your own fragrant legend. You'd think after wrestling with guest lists, togas, and the scented oil lottery, you'd be ready for anything. But no Roman feast is truly safe from disaster until you've greased all the right palms and muttered all the right prayers. In Rome, the unseen guests at every party are the gods, and the slightly less divine, very mortal, but equally powerful doorkeepers, porters, and kitchen overseers who can make or break your evening with a single smirk. The sun's last gold licks the rooftops as you slip away from the clamor of final preparations. You clutch a little bundle, coins, cakes, tiny vials of oil, and one honey-drenched fig. Because in this city, gratitude is best expressed in small, sticky denominations. You move quietly down a corridor of mosaic floors, past walls painted with the exploits of heroes who, if the rumors are true, knew a thing or two about bribery themselves. First, the household shrine. The Lares, little terracotta guardians, sit nestled in their alcove above a low-burning lamp. You kneel, or at least crouch. These knees have seen too many dinner parties, whispering a hasty plea for mercy. Let the wine not run out. Let the senator's mistress behave. Let nobody choke on a peacock feather. You set out your offerings, the fig, a tiny clay cup of wine, and a pinch of incense that sends a coil of perfumed smoke snaking toward the ceiling. You promise to clean the shrine tomorrow, though both you and the gods know it'll probably be Felix with a damp rag. Next, the real gatekeepers, the household staff. You find the doorman, Gaius, ancient, gnarled, and twice as suspicious as any border guard. His job is to keep out uninvited guests and, perhaps more importantly, let in the right, unexpected ones at your signal. You press a coin into his hand with a subtlety that's anything but. Tonight, only the list, you say, then lean in. Unless the Greek ambassador arrives with more of those candied figs. He grunts, possibly approval, possibly just his knees, but you know the message has landed. Then there's the kitchen. The chef is a genius, a tyrant, and when crossed, a saboteur of biblical proportions. You enter the hot, noisy heart of the villa, dodging scullions with baskets of artichokes and boys plucking ducks. The air is a glorious punch of roasting meat, herbs, and a faint whiff of burning ambition. You find the chef, hair wild, face flushed, wielding a ladle like a weapon. Anything you need, anything at all, you ask, offering up the jar of honey and a whispered rumor about a rival's kitchen disaster last week. He snorts, pockets the honey, and, after a dramatic sigh, agrees to keep the garum sauce on the side this time. The musicians need a little incentive too. Nerves are running high. You hand off a pouch of dried apricots and a promise that yes, this year the chorus will actually be paid before midnight. They nod, their relief almost as loud as their tuning up. One of them, Callistus, the harpist with delusions of grandeur, asks if his mother can attend. Only if she brings her famous lemon cakes, you reply. Bribes, you see, are a family affair. And lest you forget, the most important bribes are the ones nobody sees. You slip through the garden, where a statue of Venus lounges under a curtain of ivy. Someone, perhaps a hopeful lover, perhaps a bored slave, has tucked a fresh rose behind her ear. You pour a libation of wine at her feet, whispering, "Just a little help with the seating arrangements, if you please." A faint breeze stirs, carrying the scent of rosemary and nighttime promises. You take it as a sign, though in Rome, everything is a sign if you're desperate enough. Back inside, Felix is waiting with another list, this one of special requests. The twins want their favorite fortune teller snuck in through the side gate. She brings her own cards and her own opinions. The actress Cassia needs assurance that her beloved lapdog will not be mistaken for a hors d'oeuvre. The senator's wife would like the torchbearers to look heroic, not sweaty. You scribble a few extra coins into their pouches, mutter a prayer for patience, and remind Felix to keep the doors mostly closed, unless he hears the secret knock. The secret knock changes every week, of course, but tonight it's 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. Or is it the other way around? No matter, you'll recognize the sound of opportunity. Sometimes you wonder if the gods are watching, laughing as you juggle the endless, silly logistics of mortal joy. Or maybe they're just envious. After all, when was the last time anyone threw a party for them that didn't end in a thunderbolt or a rain of frogs? You offer another quick plea, this time to Mercury, patron of planners and all things sneaky. Let the news be good, the drama mild, the laughter long. You promise a bigger offering if tonight's calamities remain, at most, amusing. As dusk deepens, the first torches are lit. The villa glows, a beacon of warmth and invitation against the gathering night. The air outside is sweet with jasmine. Inside, the murmur of voices swells, anxious and excited. You check the entryway for the 10th time. Too early, of course. But in Rome, the earliest guests are either the most eager to be seen or the most desperate for a head start on the wine. The slaves line up, faces shining, ready for action. You hand out last-minute reminders, a coin here, a kind word there, the occasional warning glare for anyone who thinks tonight is a good night for creative improvisation. In the kitchen, the chef bellows final orders. In the atrium, the musicians warm up, their notes trembling in the scented air. One last sweep through the villa, one last glance at the shrine. You feel the hush before the storm, the breathless magic that comes when the world holds still, just for a heartbeat. Rome is waiting, gods above, mortals below, and you, somewhere in the middle, balancing prayers and bribes like a master acrobat. A hush, a faint tinkling of coins, and you ready yourself as the night begins to bloom. The first star is barely trembling in the Roman dusk when you hear the familiar grind of chariot wheels on the stones outside. Music to your ears, or maybe just the opening note in tonight's overture of chaos. You hurry to the vestibule, heart quick with anticipation and a dash of dread, as the parade begins. This is no mere trickle of guests, but a spectacle, a moving tapestry woven from silk, intrigue, and the art of a grand entrance. The main gate swings open with the self-importance of a senator's speech. A hush falls, then rises. Laughter, cheers, a gasp as the first guest steps down. Senator Cornelius, cloaked in purple, his golden brooch catching the last sunlight like a beacon for aspiring gossips. He glances around to see who's watching. Everyone is, naturally, and offers you a nod so imperious you half expect him to demand a triumphal arch. Behind him come the others in quick succession, each determined to outdo the last. Cloaks swirl, sandals flash, slaves hustle behind with baskets, lyres, cages of squawking birds, or small perfumed dogs. You eye the latter, hoping Cassia's lapdog does not mistake it for a rival. The air grows thick with perfume and anticipation, and every guest seems to carry a pocket full of secrets along with their party mask. You stand at the threshold, the appointed master of ceremonies, smiling and bowing, trading cheek kisses and coated handshakes, feeling more like a diplomat at war than a party planner. Clodia sweeps in, gown the color of ripe figs, a laurel tucked in her hair. She winks, then leans close to whisper, "If the senator sits next to me, I'll need an extra goblet." You wink back, promising nothing, and signal Felix to take note. Extra wine for Clodia, extra distance for the senator's wandering hands. The chariots line up in the street, each more elaborate than the last. One is painted with golden dolphins, another sports a peacock feather canopy, and a third seems to have borrowed half a flower shop for the occasion. Marcus the Younger arrives in a borrowed litter, trying and failing to look nonchalant as he extricates himself from a tangle of silk curtains. "Took a wrong turn at the Forum," he explains, brushing rose petals from his hair. Poets drift up in pairs, trailing rumors and half-remembered debts. A matron steps out in a gown sewn with tiny bells. Every move she makes sends a tinkling ripple through the air, like an announcement of each new thought. You offer her your arm and try not to wince as she insists on describing every detail of her latest dream. "It featured you, dear," she confides, "though you had much better hair." You nod gravely. Dreams are sacred after all, and Rome's dreams most of all. There's a commotion near the gate. A chariot painted in the blue and gold of Alexandria pulls up, and out steps the evening's mystery. The Greek envoy, swathed in layers, a subtle smile hidden behind his carefully arranged beard. Rumor claims he once dined with Cleopatra. Rumor also claims he can drink anyone under the table and recite Homer backwards, though never at the same time. You greet him with just enough deference, hinting you know his secrets, but not all of them. Some guests are born for spectacle. Cassia, the actress, arrives not by chariot, but on the shoulders of 4 laughing slaves, tossing rose petals with such abandon that the pavement blushes. She blows a kiss to the crowd and announces, "Tonight, I am Venus, or at least her favorite understudy." You try not to roll your eyes. Cassia's entrances are the stuff of legend and cleanup crew's nightmares. Felix keeps a running tally, murmuring names in your ear and offering emergency solutions. The poet forgot his invitation, but remembered his lyre. Should we let him in? You wave him through, knowing full well a poet denied is a poet who will immortalize your failure in scathing verse. Each guest is checked, welcomed, given a goblet of watered wine and a warning about the fountains. No swimming until midnight by decree of the host. You spot a pair of new lovers, barely out of their teens, giggling behind their cloaks as they try to slip inside unnoticed. They fail, gloriously. Clodia sniffs them out and declares, "Young love, keep them away from the roses or there'll be a scandal by dessert." You shepherd them gently toward the poet's couch, knowing they'll be fodder for at least 3 epigrams before dawn. As the vestibule fills, the mood swells and shifts. Rivalries spark, alliances flicker, old flames flare up and burn quietly under the surface. You catch stolen glances, the flare of envy in a matron's eye, the slow smile of a senator calculating his next move. The slaves usher guests inside, their tunics bright, their eyes darting for trouble. You catch Felix handing off a secret note, probably a seating change or a discreet warning about the state of the dessert table. And then, the final arrivals. The gladiator, resplendent in borrowed finery, bashfully clutching a bunch of violets. The fortune teller, swaddled in shawls, winking at you as she hands over a cryptic scrap of prophecy. Beware the second cup, joy or disaster. The musicians slip through, instruments wrapped in oilcloth, humming scales and shivering with excitement. Even the neighborhood cat saunters in tail high as if it too has a standing invitation. You take one last breath of the evening air, cool, fragrant with jasmine and wood smoke, and step inside, the noise swelling behind you. The parade is complete, the pieces in place. Rome's finest and worst are under your roof, hearts pounding, eyes bright, secrets clutched in sweaty hands. The orgy is about to begin, and for one wild moment, the whole city seems to hold its breath. A hush, the flutter of a curtain, and you glide into the golden light. Let the feast, and all its delicious folly, commence. You'd be forgiven for thinking the most dangerous moment of a Roman feast comes much later, perhaps when the poets start to duel in verse or a tipsy senator mistakes the ornamental pond for a plunge pool. But you, ever the orchestrator, know the real tightrope walk comes the moment the first goblet is raised. The opening toast, Rome's most sacred and volatile tradition, where fortunes and friendships are forged or fractured by what and whom you choose to honor. The triclinium, at last, is alive. The flicker of 100 candles dances over the faces of your guests, picking out glints of gold, scarlet, and fever-bright eyes. The tables you agonized over now brim with food and expectation. Cushions have been commandeered, seating plans gently ignored, and your best-laid arrangements already threatened by spontaneous outbreaks of laughter and flirtation. The air is thick with perfume, roasted meat, honey, anticipation, and the faintest whiff of dread. You stand, discreet but commanding, signaling Felix with a glance. He dispatches the first round of slaves bearing gleaming pitchers, Falernian for the senators, Kecuban for the poets, and a house blend for the rest, which tastes suspiciously of optimism and whatever was left in the cellars after last Saturnalia. The goblets themselves are a parade of status. Crystal for the favored, silver for the respectable, painted clay for those with more ambition than family tree. The moment hangs, delicate as spun sugar. You catch Clodia's eye across the room. She's already 3 sips ahead and winks, conspirator in chaos. A hush ripples out, as contagious as rumor. Even Cassia, who usually can't resist a theatrical aside, lowers her goblet and turns expectantly. You step to the center, your own cup heavy and cold, and, just for a second, let the tension build. Every face turns, each pair of eyes shining with curiosity, calculation, or concealed resentment. This is your stage, your moment. What you say sets the tone for the entire night. Are we celebrating peace, mocking fate, invoking the gods, or simply giving in to pleasure? You clear your throat, let a half-smile play on your lips, and speak. To the gods who watch over us, usually with amusement, to old friends, new alliances, and tonight's mischief. May the wine be sweet, the secret sweeter, and may anyone who spills their drink tonight only do so in the spirit of generosity. Laughter bubbles up, honest and slightly relieved. You raise your goblet high, and the room follows, a shimmering forest of glass and precious metal catching the candlelight, all trembling, all about to tip over into something wild. 100 voices echo back your toast, some with gusto, some with practiced indifference, a few already whispering their own subversive variations. The first sip is magic. Falernian rolls over your tongue, honeyed and dark, a whisper of sun and earth and every scandal that ever fermented in the Roman countryside. The room loosens, as if the very walls breathe out and relax. The sound of goblets clinking is its own music, clear, ringing, almost holy. You can feel the current shift. Laughter rises, voices grow bold, secrets tug at the edges of conversation. No Roman party truly begins until the second toast. Tradition, superstition, or just a clever excuse to keep the wine flowing. This time the honor falls to Senator Cornelius, who stands, face flushed with importance, and probably an early start on the Falernian. He raises his goblet and proclaims, "To our gracious host, the only soul in Rome brave enough to gather us all under one roof. May their fortunes rise faster than their wine bill." This draws cheers, applause, and an impromptu chorus from the poets, who immediately improvise a rhymed couplet about your legendary patience. You bow, accept the applause, and try not to picture tomorrow's wine merchant cackling over your empty purse. Cassia demands a toast of her own, to beauty in all its forms, especially those with dimples, blowing kisses to the room, leaving at least 3 men and 1 woman blushing into their goblets. The gladiator, red as a pomegranate, raises his cup and shyly adds, "To unexpected joys," earning an awe and a playful catcall from the fortune teller. The toasts continue, each bolder and more creative. The poets toast to muses and mistakes, the philosophers to arguments worth losing, the matron to daughters who listen, and sons who marry rich. You grin, watching as even the shyest guest is drawn into the ritual, their laughter joining the symphony of glass and gossip. With each round, the masks loosen, literal and otherwise, and the night finds its rhythm. The more wine flows, the more secrets slip free. Whispers drift along the couches. Who is in love with whom? Who arrived without an invitation? Which senator's tunic is rumored to be borrowed? Who paid for the peacock but didn't actually eat it? You hear snatches of confessions, some heartfelt, some hilarious, all delivered with the careless bravery of the lightly inebriated. It is your job, of course, to steer the river without letting it flood the banks. You circulate, gently guiding conversations away from disaster, slipping a glass of water here, a honeyed fig there. You encourage a third toast when the tension rises, deflect a brewing argument with a joke about Jupiter's love life, and ensure that the only thing more abundant than the laughter is the wine. You glance at the table and see Clodia leaning in close to the Greek envoy, her eyes dancing with mischief. The matron is telling the twins a tale about a haunted villa, and the poets are arguing over who gets to compose the evening's final toast. Felix sidles up, reporting in a stage whisper, "No spills yet, and only one attempted theft of the centerpiece." Progress by Roman standards. As the toasts taper off and the feast shifts into full swing, you step back for a moment, letting the hum of voices wash over you. The room sparkles, not just with candlelight and gold, but with possibility. Tonight, you think, even the gods would be tempted to sneak in, grab a goblet, and join the revelry. A hush, a gentle clink, and a final shimmering note as the first course arrives, onward into the heart of the feast. With the last echoes of laughter from the opening toasts hanging in the air, your dining chamber finally surrenders to the full, glorious chaos of the Roman feast. You catch your breath for a heartbeat, then the doors swing wide, and the procession of food begins, grander and more unruly than any senator's parade. If a passing god were to peer in at this moment, you're sure they'd be both scandalized and impressed, and probably steal the recipe for honeyed dormouse. Platters come first, borne by a small army of slaves in immaculate tunics. At least they were immaculate before the kitchen turned into an indoor sporting arena of sauces, crumbs, and the occasional flying fig. Steam rises in fragrant, billowing clouds, carrying with it the scents of pepper, coriander, thyme, and ambition. Each dish is both a promise and a dare. You watch as guests jostle and lean, their eyes shining with hunger and the thrill of culinary adventure. Tonight's menu is a dizzying spectacle. Honey-glazed lark, saffron-bright eggs, grapes still cold from the ice cellar, olives bursting with brine, and the infamous centerpiece, flamingo tongues, roasted just long enough to melt into pure decadence. Even the poets, usually quick with a complaint, fall silent for a moment, awestruck. You catch Senator Cornelius inspecting a platter, lifting the lid with theatrical caution. "What is it?" he whispers, as if afraid the contents might leap out and demand a tax exemption. "Mystery in every bite," you say. Guess right and you get the recipe. Guess wrong, you get seconds. Laughter erupts as he spears a morsel, and the first bite brings a ripple of delight or confusion or, in the case of the twins, fierce debate about whether it's eel or eggplant. Your own senses are assaulted in the best way. You taste a bite of peacock, crisp-skinned and spiced with something you can't quite name. A hint of far-off lands, and a pinch of the chef's personal vendetta against boredom. The bread is still warm from the oven, thick with honey and poppy seeds. You reach for a fig, its skin giving way with a gentle burst of sweetness that lingers, heavy and sun-soaked on your tongue. The slaves weave in and out like dancers, balancing amphorae of wine and platters of cheese, dodging stray elbows and whispered orders. There's a choreography to it, a madness that somehow always seems seconds from collapse. Felix is everywhere, refilling goblets, passing secret notes, and at one point, catching a runaway roast quail before it vanishes under the table. You nod at him in silent thanks. One less culinary incident for the poets to immortalize in next week's gossip. Conversation bubbles up, punctuated by the popping of grapes and the crunch of almond pastries. The fortune teller samples a dish and proclaims it auspicious for love, disastrous for lawsuits. The gladiator, awed by the spread, asks if it's true that every dish contains at least 3 spices and 1 questionable ingredient. It's Roman tradition, you assure him, to keep taste buds and reputation equally on edge. Not all guests are so brave. Clodia pokes at a bowl of garum-drenched oysters with the caution of a cat eyeing an unfamiliar lap. The matron beside her swoons over honey-glazed dormice, recounting a story about the time a guest mistook them for candied figs. Nobody has ever lived it down. Across the table, Cassia the actress devours an entire tray of stuffed olives, declaring herself queen of the Salt Kingdom, before promptly chasing it with a gulp of wine. Midway through the feast, the room is thick with scents: roasted meat, fresh bread, tangy cheese, and a whiff of something herbal and mysterious. You suspect the chef has been experimenting again. A pair of jugglers waltz between the couches, balancing trays and egos, tossing fruits into open mouths with a flourish. The laughter is easy, generous, and just a little unhinged. Nobody comes to a Roman orgy planner's feast expecting restraint. Occasionally a dish arrives that sparks suspicion and speculation. Is it boar or beef, squid or something else? The boldest guests take bites, declare their guesses, and invent stories about distant provinces where such delicacies are daily fare. Someone claims the eggs are from a rare African goose. Someone else swears the cheese is older than the city walls. In Rome, the line between myth and menu is gloriously blurred. There are moments when the spectacle threatens to tip into mayhem. A plate slips, a goblet spills, a senator loses a bet and must recite a poem with his mouth full of honeyed dates. Felix swoops in, patching disasters, smoothing tempers, and ensuring the only lasting stains are on the tablecloths and, let's be honest, reputations. Between courses, you stroll among the couches, basking in compliments and the occasional desperate plea for the recipe to the nut-stuffed fig cakes. You make a game of it. One recipe for a riddle answered, another for a bit of gossip spilled. Rome's finest secrets are swapped for a taste of your chef's greatest hits. As the night deepens, so do the flavors. The desserts arrive. Cakes dripping with honey, bowls of fresh cherries, tiny pastries stuffed with almond and sweet cheese. The musicians pick up a lively tune, and a few bold guests, and one slightly inebriated senator, begin to dance. Someone calls for more wine, someone else for the return of the flamingo tongues. There's a wildness in the air, a sense that anything could happen, and might. You pause to savor a bite of everything, marveling at how the feast has become a living thing, fluid, unpredictable, dazzling. Your eyes meet Felix's across the room, both of you grinning at the spectacle. The fortune teller winks, the poets sigh, the gladiator is on his third helping. You, the invisible architect, taste the sweetness of triumph. A hush, a last bite, a lingering scent of spices and honey, and the feast tips into legend, ready for the next round of games and seduction. You might think that after flamingo tongues and honey-drenched dormice, Rome's appetite would be satisfied for at least the length of a digestive, but you know better. Now comes the true heartbeat of the night, the games. If a Roman feast is a circus, this is the main act. Dice clatter, fortunes shift, reputations shimmer, and somewhere between the candlelight and the second course of wine, the line between luck and temptation blurs to nothing. The servants whisk away empty platters, leaving the tables scattered with grape stems and the occasional forgotten goblet. There's a hush, the momentary lull before the next storm. Then, as if by ancient signal, the dice boxes are brought out, bone and ivory, cool in the hand, heavy with promise. Felix, ever the master of ceremony's right hand, flashes you a grin and sweeps the nearest table clear. "Let the games begin," someone cries, and it's as if the whole room has been waiting for nothing else. You circulate, feeling the charge in the air, a mixture of wine, anticipation, and that delicious recklessness that only comes when the moon is high and the social hierarchies are just a bit softened by drink. The senator's wife produces her personal set of gilded dice, rumored to be blessed by Mercury himself, though Mercury would probably bet against her just for sport. The poets, never ones to miss a dramatic entrance, announce a new contest. Whoever rolls the highest must improvise a couplet on love or longing, and the prize is a kiss from the guest of their choice. You watch, amused, as half the room lines up, tongues sharp and cheeks already flushed. You join a table where the stakes escalate by the minute. Winner takes the best seat, loser drinks a double. The gladiator, all muscles and misplaced confidence, is coaxed into playing with the twins, who have a reputation for bending rules, luck, and maybe time itself. He loses spectacularly, and with good humor, downs a goblet so quickly you wonder if he'll even remember the bet. The twins, emboldened or perhaps just bored, turn their attention to a matron who claims to read omens in the way the dice land. "If they land on sixes," she intones, "expect a declaration of love before dawn." You roll, land a pair of ones, and she winks. Or perhaps a confession of debt. Meanwhile, at the next couch, Clodia holds court over a game of knucklebones. "Winner chooses their scandal," she announces, her eyes dancing. "Loser has to recite poetry while balancing a tray of grapes." The poets groan, one of them is notoriously clumsy, but the game is on. You sneak a glance at the Greek envoy, who has taken to tossing dice with the air of a man who knows too many tricks. Rumor has it he once won an entire villa in a single night's gaming. Rumor also has it he lost it by sunrise, which in Rome is simply good manners. The bets spiral. A toast to whoever can make the musicians play their favorite tune. A dare to serenade the host. A whispered wager on whether Cassia's lapdog will behave. Odds are not favorable. Someone suggests a game of truth or dare, but with a Roman twist. Truth, but only in rhyme. Dare, but only if it involves figs. The resulting chaos is enough to make the lairs blush. It's not all luck and chance. There's seduction too, and plenty of it. A pair of lovers exchange secret bets with their eyes. A matron drops a ring in the dice cup and challenges her neighbor to win it back. A wager more fraught than any senator's campaign. The poet Sulpicia bets a kiss on the next roll. Her opponent, flustered, drops the dice and declares himself vanquished, to much applause. Cassia, as always, is the ringleader of her own games, spinning riddles that double as flirtations and dealing out forfeits with a laugh that promises either delight or danger. Not to be outdone, the musicians suggest a round of guess the melody. One plucks a tune, and the others wager on who can name it first. The result is a cacophony of laughter, a few accidental serenades, and at one point the gladiator attempting a duet with the poet. It is memorable, if not melodic. You are everywhere. setting wagers, settling disputes, refilling goblets, and rescuing at least one poet from a particularly tricky dare involving a bowl of pomegranates. The air is thick with laughter and the occasional gasp as a bold bet is called or a secret is revealed. Felix keeps a running tally of winners, losers, and those who have, in classic Roman fashion, simply changed the rules mid-game. As the dice roll, so do the stories. Old grievances are aired with a smile, new romances kindled over whispered wagers. There's an edge to the revelry, a sense that anything could happen. Alliances formed, hearts broken, maybe even a marriage proposal disguised as a dare. You marvel at how the games turn strangers into co-conspirators, rivals into accomplices, and sometimes the shyest guest into the evening's unexpected hero. All the while, the wine flows, the air grows warmer, the night slips by in a haze of challenge and charm. Someone bets they can stay awake until dawn. Someone else bets they can't. You know from experience that Rome's dawns are littered with the snores of the overconfident. As the games wind down, you take a moment to breathe. The candles have burned low, the dice are scattered like tiny bones of prophecy, and the guests lean close together, their laughter softer, their secrets more easily shared. You've given them a night of risk and reward, of luck and longing, a night they'll remember, or at least pretend to, in the days to come. A hush, a roll of the dice, and the promise of one more wild bet as the hour slips deeper into the Roman night. There's a certain alchemy to a Roman night. One moment the revelers are trading clever bets and sly glances. The next, the entire house is swept up in a fever that could only be blamed on the gods, or more accurately, on Dionysus. Bacchus to you, dear Roman, patron of wine, wildness, and every party that's ever staggered past midnight. You know the signs. The wine flows faster, the laughter turns loose and deliciously slurred, and even the marble statues look like they're ready to throw caution and tunics to the wind. It begins innocently. The slaves arrive with yet another round of amphorae, these ones so heavy they seem to groan with secrets. The Falernian is finally running low, but now comes the darker, wilder vintages, rumored to have crossed the Alps strapped to the backs of singing centaurs, or at least very persuasive merchants. You hear the cork pop, the rich glug into goblets, and something in the room shifts, like a breeze turning from pleasant to wild. Felix, ever alert, nods at you as if to say, "It's time." The musicians sense it too, slipping into wilder melodies, the rhythm of the lyres suddenly more dangerous, the flutes dancing a scale that promises trouble. One chorus girl, who may or may not be a senator's niece in disguise, lets down her hair and spins in a circle, scattering a halo of jasmine petals that rain down on the nearest couch. You step back and let Bacchus take the reins. There's a reason his followers are said to dance barefoot through vineyards and howl at the moon. This is the hour for shedding decorum, for letting the pulse of the wine carry you somewhere you'd never dare by daylight. If the first act of your party was theater, this is pure myth. An ecstatic, spiraling release from every rule Rome ever carved into marble. It starts with dancing, as all Bacchic madness does. The poet Sulpicia leaps to her feet, seizes the hand of the gladiator, and pulls him into the center of the room. She shouts for music, for more wine, for the gods themselves to come down and witness her pirouette. One of the twins, nobody is sure which, spins the matron so quickly her bells ring out a new rhythm, and soon half the room is up, reeling, whirling, limbs tangled in joy and confusion. The room blurs, candles flicker, shadows leap. The air is thick with the scent of crushed grapes, trampled rose petals, spilled honey, and sweat. Even the musicians can't keep up. The tempo rises, stumbles, soars, collapses into giggles, and rises again. Someone starts a conga line, anachronistic, but who's counting? weaving around the couches, through the dining chamber, out to the peristyle and back again, picking up stray slaves, wandering poets, and one particularly enthusiastic lapdog. Bacchic revelry, of course, knows no boundaries of class, age, or even species, as evidenced by the household cat who, inspired by the mood, takes a dramatic leap onto the dessert table and is immediately crowned priestess of Bacchus with a wreath of violets. Cassia, the actress, improvises a hymn to the god, her voice rising and falling in a warble that's part prayer, part parody, part seductive dare. Even the usually stoic Senator Cornelius surrenders, letting himself be led in a dance that will haunt him and delight his rivals at every Senate gathering for the next year. A guest suggests a ritual, pouring the dregs of every goblet into a communal bowl for Bacchus himself. The bowl is passed, each person making a toast to madness, to memory, to the freedom of letting go. You take your own sip, an alarming blend of Falernian, Kekuban, and something that tastes suspiciously like the punch from last year's Saturnalia. The taste is wild, unpredictable, a little bit dangerous, a drink fit for the god who never keeps his promises. It's at this point that secrets begin to tumble out like pearls from a broken necklace. Emboldened by wine and music, guests confess hidden crushes, old grievances, ambitions so grand they'd make Jupiter blink. Someone, you suspect one of the twins, climbs onto a table and declaims poetry in honor of every lost love and future scandal. Another guest serenades the fortune teller, who responds with a prophecy that may or may not involve 2 goats and a barrel of vinegar. Even Felix, discreet and reliable Felix, is swept up, leading a chorus in a raucous drinking song that makes the lairs tremble in their niche. Out in the garden, under a moon so bright it feels almost indecent, a splinter group has started their own festivities. Someone plucks figs from a low branch and feeds them one by one to the poets, who compete to describe the taste in the most lascivious terms. You join them for a moment, feeling the cool night air prickling on your skin, the grass damp beneath your feet, the whole city humming with wild possibility. You laugh, realizing you've lost track of your own shoes. The Bacchic break is more than just drunken abandon. It's a ritual shedding of masks, a gleeful admission that sometimes pleasure is its own sacred cause. It's the hour when you remember that the world is older than duty, when laughter makes even the gods envious, when you become, if only for a breathless spell, part of something vast, unruly, and utterly alive. Eventually, as the music softens and the first edge of fatigue creeps in, the guests drift back to couches, cheeks flushed, eyes shining. They collapse in heaps, trading stories and half-finished songs. Felix helps you pass around cups of water, slices of pear, a little honey to soothe the wildest revelers. You take one last look at the room, wine stains, tangled garlands, laughter echoing into the night. Dionysus, you think, would be proud. A hush, the soft sigh of spent revelers, and you let the magic linger, knowing that tonight Bacchus truly took the wheel. Let's be honest. No matter how skillfully you've orchestrated the seating, the scents, and the wine, there's no force in Rome, mortal or divine, that can guarantee an orgy will run according to plan. As the Bacchic spirit fades into flushed laughter and gentle snoring, you scan the candlelit room with the experienced paranoia of a circus ringmaster. This, you know, is when the real party tricks begin, because for every honored guest on your wax tablet, there are 2 more hoping to slip through the cracks, or, failing that, the kitchen door. Tonight, as always, the gatekeeper's discipline is held for most of the evening. But Rome is a city built on audacity, and your party is the brightest torch for moths within 100 miles. You spot the first intruder out of the corner of your eye, a young patrician, face flushed and tunic just a bit too new. He's laughing a little too hard at Clodia's jokes, not realizing that she's already pegged him as a pretender. You catch Felix's eye and raise a finger, just enough signal to have the boy subtly ushered back to his chariot, or at least to the less interesting end of the garden where the poets are currently reciting their longest, dullest epic. Then there are the professionals, party crashers with years of experience, able to blend in with the decor, adopt accents, even swap togas mid-conversation. One such shapeshifter is currently charming the musicians, regaling them with stories of that time in Alexandria. You've never seen this man before in your life. Still, he's got a winning smile, so you let him stay on probation. After all, what's a Roman feast without a wild card or two? The real challenge, of course, is the overserved. The first sign is usually the gentle tipping of a goblet that accidentally soaks a neighbor's lap. Next, a bout of overly enthusiastic applause for the juggler, culminating in the guest attempting to juggle Amphore himself. Spoiler, he cannot. The senator from Capua, for example, is currently embroiled in a debate with a bust of Apollo, convinced he's stumbled upon a philosopher in disguise. You sidle over and, with practiced ease, steer him toward the fountain for a breath of fresh air. If he slips and falls in, well, at least he'll be sobered up for dessert. Every feast has its tipping point, when the number of spilled secrets finally overtakes the number of intact platters. You're ready. A stash of cold towels behind the curtain, an emergency platter of bread and cheese, and the one thing every seasoned orgy planner keeps on hand, a backup toga for those who find themselves suddenly, inexplicably, without one. You dispatch Felix to run interference, his specialty. With a word here, a gentle nudge there, he ensures that the chaos never quite breaks through to true disaster. You overhear Clodia, goddess of rumor, inviting a rather tipsy matron to tell the group what she really thinks of Senator Cornelius's poetry. You intervene at the last second, redirecting her to compliment the senator's sandals instead. Everyone knows they're the only thing about him universally praised. A pair of lovers squabble, then make up in a whirlwind of rose petals and whispered apologies, while in the corner, the fortune teller is busily collecting bets on who will be the next to faint. She's never wrong. The uninvited don't just slip in through doors. They sneak in as old friends of friends, distant cousins of neighbors, plus ones, who multiply like rabbits after sunset. Some are harmless, a lost philosopher who spends the night debating with a cheese platter, or a musician's apprentice so nervous he only speaks in proverbs. Others, however, require a firmer touch. When you find the notorious party pooper Gaius bragging about the superior feasts of Pompeii, you signal the kitchen slaves to offer him the last of the vinegary wine. That usually does the trick. Still, you know that a bit of scandal is the lifeblood of a great Roman night. It gives your party the aftertaste that lingers long after the last goblet is drained. As long as the drama is entertaining and the truly catastrophic moments are averted, you're willing to let a few mysteries linger. Who was the masked guest who danced so well with the twins? How did Senator Flavia's missing earring end up in the triclinium fountain? Why is the household cat wearing a laurel wreath and sleeping in the punch bowl? Sometimes the drama is less amusing. A raised voice, a broken cup, the threat of a duel over a misinterpreted glance. This is when you step in, the diplomat in a toga, armed with a joke and a tray of candied almonds. "Let's save the dueling for after dessert," you declare, and more often than not, the tension collapses into laughter, or, at worst, a dramatic sigh. You're also master of the delicate exit. When the overserved need to be spirited away, you dispatch Felix or a trusted slave to escort them to the special side chamber, quiet, candlelit, and most importantly stocked with bread and water. There, they can recover in peace, or at least out of the public eye. The next morning, all will be forgiven, or at least cleverly ignored. Rome is a city that thrives on selective memory. As the hour grows late and the guests mellow, you scan the room, noting who's drifting, who's plotting, who's eyeing the exits with conspiratorial smiles. You catch a glimpse of the poets huddled together, drafting tomorrow's rumors, Cassia reclining with a look of mock innocence, as if she weren't the source of at least half of them. And the twins, now indistinguishable, both wearing the same smug, wine-sweet smile. You breathe a little easier. The night is still alive with possibility, but the worst is behind you. The uninvited have been mostly redirected or absorbed into the festivities, the overserved soothed or swept away, and the drama kept within the artfully crumbling walls of good taste. A hush, the clink of a cup, and one last laugh as the room settles. Scandal managed, at least until sunrise. You'd be forgiven, in the sweep of wine and laughter, for thinking that a Roman orgy planner's job ends once the goblets clink and the dancers twirl. But you know better. This is Rome, after all, where every shadow holds a secret, every whisper is a coin flipped in the dark, and the real games begin not at the table, but behind the velvet drapes, in the cool hush of the alcoves just out of sight. In fact, you'd wager that more laws have been shaped, fortunes made, and marriages arranged on a cushion in the shadows than in all the marble halls of the Senate. The triclinium may be the stage, but the alcoves are your backstage, a labyrinth of private nooks and cozy corners, half lit by flickering lamplight and perfumed with crushed violets and clandestine ambition. You float through the party, eyes open to the subtle choreography, a senator slipping away from the crowd, a pair of rival poets ducking behind a curtain, Cassia, the actress, drawing a nervous magistrate into the soft shadows for a private rehearsal. You pretend not to notice, but your mental ledger tallies every entrance and exit, every pairing that will fuel tomorrow's rumor mill. You peek through a beaded curtain, soft tinkling, a faint whiff of spikenard, and catch sight of Cornelius, resplendent in purple, huddled with the Greek envoy. Their conversation is all low voices and knowing glances, punctuated by the odd wave of a signet ring. They're trading promises, favors, and, if you read the subtle shift in posture, perhaps a few secrets about next month's grain shipments. You file it away for later. Sometimes the best insurance policy is a scrap of overheard gossip. In another alcove, the matron and the fortune teller lean together, heads bowed, giggling like schoolgirls. The matron pulls a pearl earring from her sleeve. The fortune teller slips a gold coin into her palm, and they both cast careful looks over their shoulders before dissolving into laughter. It seems tonight's prophecies include investment advice and the latest scandal about a certain senator's youthful companion. You decide it's probably best not to know the details. The air in these hidden spaces is thicker, softer, tinged with secrets and the velvet warmth of closely held confidences. You brush past a curtain, feel the heat of too many bodies in too small a space, and catch a snatch of poetry, half murmured, half stolen. Someone's hand lingers on your arm. You turn to find one of the twins, or is it both, flashing a conspiratorial grin. Looking for adventure? They purr. Or just eavesdropping? Both, you admit, and they laugh, darting away to their next escapade. You pass by the garden doorway, where the moonlight pools in silver puddles, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine wraps around you like a promise. There, a poet and a merchant sit knee to knee, trading secrets sweetened by figs and shared ambition. Their heads are close, voices low. One speaks of debt, the other of dreams. And before you know it, you've witnessed the birth of a partnership or a rivalry that will echo through the markets for months. The true heart of Rome's power beats softly here, beneath the surface of laughter and music. Even as revelers spill wine and chase after dancers, alliances are being formed in the alcoves. A magistrate quietly slips a deed to a crumbling villa into a friend's hand. Two old enemies toast their reconciliation, or at least a temporary ceasefire, with goblets held just out of the main light. A young politician offers a rare amphora in exchange for a promised introduction at next week's games. It's a market of favors, a feast of whispered promises, each more intoxicating than the last. Of course, not every secret is grand or calculated. Some alcoves are just safe havens for the shy or weary. You spot the bashful gladiator, shoes off, feet tucked beneath him, listening as a poet recites a gentle verse about the moon. In another corner, a pair of lovers forget the world entirely, sharing a quiet moment that's all the more precious for being hidden. Here, behind the curtains, Rome's masks slip just a little, and you see the soft animal truth beneath the marble. Your role is equal parts host, diplomat, and silent sentry. Sometimes you step in, a gentle cough at the curtain, a polite request for the alcove to be vacated for a new round of intrigue. Sometimes you just listen, picking up scraps of information like a magpie with a taste for leverage. Your skill lies in knowing when to intervene, when to let secrets ferment, and when to let a guest believe their whispers are safe. They never are. Felix, faithful as ever, slips through the alcoves, replenishing wine, scattering fresh petals, offering gentle reminders to keep the noise low. He is your eyes and ears when you are busy playing peacemaker in the main room. Every now and then he delivers a whispered report. The senator's wife has promised her famous recipe to the merchant in exchange for a new shipment of saffron. Also, the twins have challenged the Greek envoy to a contest of riddles. You nod, grateful for his discretion. Back in the heart of the party, the lights seem brighter, the laughter louder, but you know that the true currency of the night has already changed hands in the shadowed wings. The alcoves pulse with hidden life, the real pulse of Rome thrumming behind the curtains and beneath the laughter. You pause, breathing in the mingled scents of wine, violets, and secrets, feeling for a moment the peculiar power of the host to witness, to hold, to shape the stories that will ripple through the city long after dawn. You know that tonight, as with every great Roman night, the stories that matter most are those born in shadows and exchanged with a knowing glance. A hush, a quick flutter of a curtain, and another secret slips into history as you drift back into the candlelight. Keeper of Rome's whispers, master of the hidden feast. You always imagine that, when the last candle sputters and the final laugh fades into the walls, you'll simply glide into a luxurious silence, perhaps drape yourself artfully across a velvet couch and bask in your own organizational genius. That's not how Rome works. Instead, you're roused from whatever half-nap you managed on a pile of abandoned cushions by the sound of reality breaking through, the slap of sandals, the clatter of buckets, the unmistakable wail of someone realizing their cloak has been swapped for a pile of rose petals and a slightly used laurel wreath. The triclinium looks less like the heart of Rome's social life and more like a battlefield. Platters lie toppled in a greasy array. The once glorious tablecloth is a patchwork of wine stains, honey smears, and something green you sincerely hope is parsley. The couches are draped with sleeping bodies, some still murmuring dreams, some already plotting their alibis. Felix, the only soul in Rome who seems to function on 3 hours of sleep and a slice of leftover cake, is already at work, barking orders to a small army of slaves. He's become a sort of general of the morning after mop-up, wielding a broom like a scepter. The first task, separating the guests from the scenery. The twins have somehow knotted themselves together with a garland, and Clodia has misplaced both her sandals and her dignity. The poets, those nocturnal creatures, are draped like overcooked noodles over the backs of chairs, clutching their last verses to their chests. Cassia is discovered asleep beneath the main table, clutching a bronze lyre and muttering about a dream duel with Apollo. You give her a gentle nudge and a glass of water. She thanks you with a bleary grin and promptly falls back asleep. You open the windows. The dawn is shy and pink, reluctant to look too closely at what's transpired. The air is sharp and slightly sour, with undertones of trampled violets and the faint, sweet ghost of last night's incense. In the garden, the fortune-teller is reading the dregs in her goblet, claiming she can predict who will have the worst headache. It's you, but she keeps that to herself. The gladiator, already up, is methodically stacking plates and humming what might be a hymn or a hangover cure. You make a mental note to send him home with extra honey cakes. Now comes the real detective work, finding out what and who was left behind. The missing earring surfaces in a bowl of olives. The senator's wig, sadly, floats in the fountain, watched over by the Lares, who seem more amused than scandalized. 1 peacock feather, 3 love notes, and a suspiciously expensive sandal emerge from the cushions. Felix keeps a tally. Tomorrow you'll send the appropriate notes and apologies, and hope no one writes a satirical poem about the mysterious footprints leading out to the street. You set the slaves to their tasks, sweeping petals from the floor, bundling linens for the laundry, retrieving goblets from the bushes outside. The aftermath is not without its charm. There's a gentle camaraderie in this daylight chaos, a sense of shared secrecy. Those who wake early enough are treated to strong coffee and slices of fig cake, a bracing reward for surviving the night. Those who linger are gently herded toward the exit with smiles, compliments, and occasionally a borrowed cloak. There are tracks to cover too, both literal and metaphorical. You send word to the kitchen to double-check that the senator's special wine never left the cellar. Felix discreetly returns a certain merchant's ring with a polite, "You dropped this." The twins are sworn to secrecy about the events in the private alcove, with limited success. Any broken goblets are swept away before the housekeeper can start her annual inventory of shame. A poet tries to bribe you for the guest list, but you laugh it off, threatening to set his worst couplets to music unless he behaves. Occasionally there are awkward encounters. 2 lovers, whose tryst behind the curtains lasted longer than anyone expected, emerge into the morning blinking, rumpled, and suddenly shy. You offer them coffee and a discreet route to the door. Clodia finds her sandals, both of them, miraculously, and leaves a note on your desk. "Best party yet. I forgive you for the figs." The Greek envoy, now missing his peacock-plumed cloak, offers a wink and a cryptic, "Let's not wait too long for the next one." You savor the small victories. The fact that nothing caught fire, this time, that the only truly broken hearts will mend with a nap and a strong cup of wine, that Rome's rumor mill will spin for weeks on the gold you supplied last night. The city outside is waking, slowly, as if to give your guests enough time to slip home and pretend nothing happened. The marble floors are once again visible, glinting in the light, and for a moment the house feels like your own private temple, a monument to mischief, memory, and the delicate art of leaving no evidence. Felix hands you the lost and found basket with a grin. You drop in a laurel wreath, retrieve a forgotten brooch, and wonder, not for the first time, how the gods manage their own messes after a celestial banquet. You suspect there's a divine Felix somewhere, sweeping stardust and wrangling hungover muses. You pour yourself a final cup of coffee, breathe in the clean, sharp morning air, and take stock. The night's chaos has been tamed, its secrets tucked away, its legends already growing in the retelling. The hush after the feast is a thing of beauty, fleeting, golden, and entirely yours. A hush, the flutter of a curtain, and one last laugh as the city wakes to another Roman day. Your work covered, your tracks hidden, your legend secure. The house is quiet, finally, blissfully quiet. The marble floors, now scrubbed and gleaming, echo only with the occasional whisper of a breeze through the half-open shutters. You stand in the center of the triclinium, hands on hips, surveying the battlefield after the victory. This is the hour of the debrief, a sacred Roman ritual even the gods would envy. The time to tally triumphs and disasters, savor secrets, and begin plotting the next great adventure before the last echoes of this one have faded. Felix, who has survived on adrenaline, honeyed dates, and the giddy knowledge that he alone knows where all the bodies, metaphorically, are buried, stands at your side with the guest list in one hand and a cup of very strong coffee in the other. "Well?" he asks, eyebrows raised with the mix of challenge and pride that only your most loyal accomplice could muster. "Shall we count the casualties or the compliments first?" You chuckle, stretching the last kinks from your neck, and start at the top. The guest list. Every senator and socialite accounted for, none, miraculously, carted home by the city watch. Clodia left a note promising revenge for the honeyed figs. The twins have, for the moment, decided not to swap identities until next Saturnalia, and Cassia's love song to the household cat is already being whispered in every tavern from here to the Aventine. You add poetic scandal to the list of achievements. It's Rome, after all, where reputation is just another currency. Then the disasters, counted as gently as bruised fruit. One broken amphora, quickly replaced before anyone noticed. A scandalous bet involving Senator Cornelius and the matron's pearls. Details blurry, but both parties left smiling. And a single, spectacular tumble into the fountain, which, thanks to the fortune-teller's intervention, is now regarded as a sign of favor from the gods rather than grounds for exile. You note, with relief, that the kitchen remains intact, the chef mollified with a special jar of imported honey, and not a single flamingo tongue left over to haunt your dreams. But the true score is written in the stories your guests will carry into the city. Whispered alliances born in shadowy alcoves, feuds temporarily smothered by laughter, romances kindled over stolen kisses and the flicker of candlelight. You can almost hear the tales unfolding. Did you see? Did you hear? Can you believe what happened behind the curtain? Your party will ripple through the baths, the markets, the temples, each retelling gilding the truth a little more until the night is as much myth as memory. Felix starts to recount the strangest moments, a runaway lapdog crowned with violets, the senator's impromptu ode to olive oil, the midnight conga line led by a tipsy poet. Each anecdote is a tiny triumph. No one was arrested, no one set fire to the drapes, and you only had to bribe 2 doorkeepers, he grins. You nod, feigning seriousness. A record low, I'll alert the historians. This, of course, is the moment for lessons. You make a mental note to triple the order of cushions next time. Too many guests, not enough places to faint gracefully. To instruct Felix to double-check the identities of masked guests, and to keep the musicians further from the dessert table. 1 broken lyre, 3 sticky goblets, and a moral you'll be unpacking for weeks. You vow, sincerely if briefly, to limit the open bar after midnight, though you both know Bacchus laughs at such resolutions. Yet despite the chaos, the mistakes, and the small catastrophes, you feel the slow, golden satisfaction of a night well spent. You remember the hush after the last song, the gentle snoring of the poets, the rare, grateful silence of a room that knows it has tasted something special. Your job is to deliver a legend, and tonight you did just that. Rome will remember and embroider your efforts long after the last garland is swept away. You and Felix sit together at the table where the only remains of the feast are crumbs and the ghostly scent of frankincense. The sunlight slants through the windows, catching the shimmer of a forgotten earring and the faint, sticky sheen of spilled honey. "So," Felix says, "when do we begin the next one?" And you, exhausted but already infected by anticipation, smile. Soon, very soon, Rome is always hungry for another legend. You write out the invitations in your mind, testing names and combinations, plotting alliances, feuds, and a few gentle surprises. You picture the faces, the laughter, the slow unfurling of scandal and joy. For a moment, the future is as sweet and uncertain as the first sip of Falernian wine, full of promise and a little danger. Then, with a final stretch, you rise, drop a laurel wreath into the lost and found basket, and savor the hush that comes only after a perfect storm. The world is already waking. The birds begin to chatter, and the street outside fills with the slow stir of a city that refuses to sleep. You step into the dawn with coffee in hand, Felix at your side, and a head full of new schemes. Rome is waiting, as ever, for your next invitation. And you, ever the master of revels, the weaver of dreams, the keeper of secrets, are ready. A hush, a glint of sunlight, and the promise of another night. The legend, for now, is yours.